We acknowledge the original owners of the land on which we podcast, whose stories were told for thousands of years. Today, we are recording in Meanjin. We pay our respects to elders past and present who may be listening. Sovereignty was never ceded. A quick note before we get started that there may be some swearing in today's podcast. If you don't like swearing or usually listen with children in the car, you have been warned. You're listening to What in the NDIS Now, a podcast where I, Hannah Redford, and my friend Sam Rosenbaum interview participants and providers about all things NDIS. This episode of What in the NDIS Now is brought to you by Astalty. Astalty is the software solution for NDIS professionals built by NDIS professionals. Astalty is my go-to software, and Astalty is trusted and loved by hundreds of other NDIS providers. I love how easy it is to use and how it keeps all my participant information, notes, and invoicing all in one place, available to me anytime from any device. Sign up now for your 14-day free trial. Head to astalty.com.au to sign up now. See for yourself how much easier managing all your NDIS business needs are by using Astalty. Thanks again to Astalty for sponsoring today's episode. Hi Sam, how are you going?
Hey, yeah, really good, Hannah. Yourself?
Yeah, good. What's been happening?
Busy work, NDIS reviews, NDIS bill reviews, amendments to said bill, and pulling my hair out. It's great fun. Great time in the industry. But
But today we have an awesome guest. We have Johnathan. Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, guys. How are we?
Very excited to have you with us. Now, Johnathan, as we always like to start the episode, where did you grow up?
Sure. So I grew up in Newcastle, specifically in a suburb called Cardiff. It's probably about 20 minutes from the Newcastle CBD. I'm still in Cardiff. Our office is actually in Cardiff as well. So I feel like I haven't gone very far in my life in terms of location, but yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. So you sort of have born there and didn't move an inch.
Exactly. I think like where my office is, the bus that I used to catch to school, the bus stop is 2 minutes away from where my office is. So I'm like, been seeing the same scenery for a long, long time.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
embed the nostalgia.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of nostalgia around here.
And how did you get into the disability sector?
So it was by accident, to be honest. I was working, well, I was studying psychology, and one of my friends used to work in, I guess, residential under 18s care. And they were primarily doing like sleepover supports or like overnight, active overnights and things like that. And I think at the time I think I was working at Woolworths or something like that, IGA, trying to get some more hours. And he was telling me about this and how great it was, and the fact that like it fit around the university schedule and stuff like that. And yeah, he sent through some details and I applied and yeah, eventually got the job. I was working in residential care for 6 months, I guess, supporting guys in that space. And then out of the blue, one day I just got a phone call, and the company that I used to work for had like two departments to it. So there was like the residential side and the disability side. And I hadn't had any exposure to the disability side. And then I got a phone call one day and they were just like, hey, you're now working with this client. They've got a disability. Here are your shifts, basically. And I moved from one department of the business to the other and started supporting someone, in I guess what's now known as SIL. And I think it was right before SIL was, I guess it was under the old ADIC block funded model, right before it transitioned to the NDIS.
Oh, that's so interesting. So many of our great stories start by stumbling blindly in and loving it to bits and then going, heck yes, this is where I'm meant to be. And so tell us a little bit about where you sort of are now.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, that was probably in 2013, something like that. So like, yeah, 10, 11 years ago. And yeah, finished my degree, decided I didn't want to be a psychologist, decided I didn't want to, go down that path anymore, and realized that I love being a sport worker more than what I previously thought I wanted to do, which was psychology. So finished my degree, continued to support the same person that I was originally supporting. He moved into group accommodation, and continued to support him. And I think we had 4 other guys that lived at the same complex as well. So great guys, challenging, but awesome. Had so much fun with those guys and miss supporting them actually. So I ran into one of them the other day for coffee. That was good. But yeah, due to the complexities these guys had, a lot of them were refused service. So people, day programs would come in and they would support them for 1 or 2 supports, and then didn't have that opportunity to build rapport up and that familiarity and that trust. And then so what would happen is they would have incidents. If you're working with someone new and you don't know how to support that person, it takes time. And I think that they didn't get through that initial phase, or weren't willing to go through the work to go through that initial phase to then build that rapport to be like, cool, I can support this person comfortably. So we would try countless providers. They would come in, do a support, turn around and say no. And then it just kind of got to the point of this, we just stopped trying to refer. And so we had five participants, 3 workers, and we would kind of just split. So one person would take one person out for an hour, then the next person, and just kind of rotate throughout the whole day. And that was kind of their community access, I guess you would call it.
I think prisoners get 1 hour a day out in the rec yard too.
I think so. And I mean, it's not far from, I guess, being institutionalized, right?
Yeah.
You're just seeing the same 4 walls for however long. And, whilst they were complex, I loved taking them out in the community. That was my favorite part of the day. We had whole set routines set up, and they were set up to make sure that incidents didn't occur. They were very, very planned and structured, because we did have a lot of instances of behaviors and things like that. But it was only when the routine would change, or the person was unfamiliar, so they didn't know the right verbal prompt to say to that person at the right time to then redirect them somewhere else, redirect their attention away. And that was when a lot of the incidents were happening. And that's why a lot of those providers stopped doing those supports. So yeah, I decided to start my own, company providing the community access. And I thought, how good would it be if I one day got to provide support to these guys? Like I said, I love doing that stuff. So yeah, took the leap, registered my ABN, registered as a sole trader, downloaded a whole heap of resources to my computer, none of which were relevant to getting registered with the NDIS, and tried to sift through the huge amount of information that was online. And this is, I guess, early days of NDIS 2013, 14, just kind of rolling out. I'm sure there's a lot more resources out there now that kind of help people get registered, but then it was like a needle in a haystack. So
it still is a minefield.
Oh, absolutely.
But I do love the good data dump.
Yeah, I just downloaded everything and had a business planning folder on my computer and just threw everything in there. I probably still have it somewhere. And yes, that was the initial kind of motivation, and that was the initial process. So now Empowered is 100 staff, and we support probably around 150 people on a regular basis, and we're doing 1,400 hours of support every week. And we actually did get to support some of those guys that was the original motivation for starting Empowered. So it was cool to see the whole thing go full circle.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So what sort of services does Empowered provide?
Yeah. Yeah, so predominantly we do community access. We do group activities. We do a little bit of support coordination. Don't ask me anything about support coordination because I've never been one. I've never been a coordinator.
Yeah.
And we do a little bit of respite.
Oh, that sounds like such a great mix. And I think that sounds really good. So, how did you come up with Astalty?
So, yeah, I guess a couple of years ago, or probably a couple of years into Empowered, I needed to get some invoicing done, and I needed to streamline that whole process. And it was like before I had a CRM, and I needed to create some sort of bulk upload from like QuickBooks. And I met who's now my business partner, James, and James and I would work together. You know, he was able to assist me building my website, help me with payroll, help me with a whole heap of things on the back end, basically. And James and I over the years formed a really, really strong relationship. And one of the things is we were just sick and tired of our CRM and all the like hacks and add-ons and workarounds that we had to have to make it work. And we just joked about like creating a business together, and you know we could make something better, and building a CRM for Empowered. And yeah, we started to take those jokes a little bit more seriously, and yeah, we decided to give it a go.
Okay, so how did you come up with the name? Let's start there. Something easy.
All right. Do you guys know what it stands for?
Oh, we saw it on the website, but how about you tell
Okay.
us?
So I believe James's wife came up with it, Eve. She came up with the acronym. So it's a solution that actually listens to you.
Oh, I like
Everyone,
that.
everyone always has trouble saying it.
Yes. That's why I was interested in how you came up with the name, because I was like, when it's hard to say, you know, I'm interested in how you came up with it, but I really like that. So I think it's good.
Yeah, some people have called it old salty. We've gotten that.
I won't lie, I did jump on your website and I was watching some of the videos and I like stopped at Astalty and I
Mhm.
kept on saying it a couple of times to do like the whole warm up, so then I wasn't saying assaulty.
Yeah, look, if you call it old salty, I won't get offended.
So you wanted to get it started for Empowered. So do you use it at Empowered?
We do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so you are able to figure out, oh, it would be great if it could do blah, blah, blah. And then you go, James, make it do this.
Exactly.
If you're anything
and
like me, I think James would be butting his head every time you knocked on the door.
absolutely. Probably a good thing that he doesn't live in Newcastle. He's in Queensland. Otherwise, be doing a lot of door knocking.
That dreaded Teams call.
Yeah. Normally it's like, hey James, I've got an idea. And then it's like, that's when it kicks in. He's like, what now?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's great. And I think it's really helpful, and especially internally of like, hey, you know, we thought about this, and James is a very logical person. So whenever I have something like that, I need to say, here's what I think it should do. Here's the why, and it really explain how it will benefit it. And that's kind of how we are with all of our problems, right? Like, if you know, whilst we are very open to feedback and our name is a solution that actually listens to you, we get a lot of feature requests and we kind of take them all into consideration. But ultimately, it's like, why do you need this? And we try and understand the business problem. What problem are you trying to solve? How is it going to make your life easier? And how many other people's lives is it going to make easier as well? And if it's just like a unique problem to your business, sorry, but we probably won't build it. But if we can see that it impacts and will have a benefit for everyone, great. Then we'll go ahead and try and build that feature.
Yeah. Well, I've been using Astalty, and of course Ellie has been using it because she's part of our company, and I love it so far. And I was saying to Sam before you jumped on that I know that there's a special way my brain works that no one else's brain probably works the same way, and so I do have like a separate other like app type thing that I use. And I was saying to Sam, I actually prefer having two different apps than absolutely everything being able to be done in the one place, because I think I would get lost within the one bit of software if it could do how just like one person's brain works. And so I completely understand that and appreciate you thinking that way. So what is your favorite feature of Astalty? Let's start there.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Jeez. I just think of like the things that I get most frustrated with having to do in terms of admin processes. And one of the things I really, really disliked was tracking documents manually through spreadsheets. So it's not even like a very sexy feature or anything. I just like being able to track documents, see the expiry date, and get notified that, hey, this document is going to expire, because we had this like holy grail of spreadsheets, which had like every document in the company, the expiry date, when it expired, who was responsible for it, and like that thing took so long to update over time, and half the time it was wrong because it's only as good as the information that gets entered. So like we would go for audit, and then we were like, okay, show me this agreement, and then based on the spreadsheet, it's in date, and the auditor opens it. Oh, the service agreement had expired. Okay, it's like, all right, well, what? There goes our spreadsheet. What was the point of all that? So I like having little things like that in place just to make business easier.
Yeah, that's really good. One of the things I really like slightly separately to the actual thing itself, which is cool, is the little videos that James does and pops up on the website. And he shows you through exactly how to get to this feature and that feature. And I think it's really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of the things is like if you do a demonstration with most software platforms, and like I shouldn't say this because maybe one of the competitors is listening, but when you jump on a platform, it's not completely obvious how to use it the first time. And that's the thing that you want to capture as soon as you log into the software, which is why you're hit with the videos the first time you click on the taskboard, is because if you don't understand the taskboard, then you miss the whole how the software works, right? So it's trying to get people to have that moment of realization when they're watching the video the very first time they log into the software. Otherwise, their attention is gone. So if we can make that happen as quick as possible, the better chance of people using the software and understanding it and getting it there is, rather than like, cool, I've logged in. Where do I go now? There's this left-hand side menu with a whole heap of buttons there. Where do I start? Do I need to set up the participant? Do I need to add services? How are they managed? It goes on and on and on. And if that's not completely obvious, then I don't know, you've almost you've lost a customer.
I think it's actually also really intuitive anyway. And I was really lucky that I haven't really needed a whole lot of the videos, because I'm also young enough that I'm happy enough to just press buttons and see what they do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, but I do think that's one of the things I do love about Astalty, is that it is pretty intuitive, and so that's really helpful.
The thing that it really stands out to me, especially with that click-through learning point, is it's working from a consulting point of view, and I've done a couple of change management solutions with moving to different systems. And that first starting point from a single user or that support coordinator's point, how do I actually do my job? Sometimes there's way too much information, sometimes there's no information, and the staff are just going, how do I actually do my job? Rather than knowing how to add some system user in. I don't need to know that. That's not part of my job function. So it's really good to see that approach for the click-through learning and the videos and prompting how to do certain tasks, especially as an intuitive point. And as Hannah was saying, even though some things can be really simple or obvious to some people, not everyone was born in the age of technology or likes technology, I guess.
Absolutely. It's I can always tell the difference when I jump on a meeting with someone and they haven't watched any of the videos and they're using the system in like very weird and wonderful ways. It's always very interesting. So try and direct as many people as we can to doing, watching those videos. And I was trying to convince James to make it so that you had to watch them and you weren't allowed to escape. You had to watch the video before, like you couldn't close the window. So I'm trying to get that one across the line. We'll see how we go.
I don't know. I think that should still be optional, but that's just me because I think that would
The
annoy
question
me.
you need on your side is before someone calls, please press 1 if you have watched the videos. Please hang up if not.
Oh, that's hilarious. Maybe some sort of auto reply on our support meeting requests.
We have
Absolutely.
noticed you have not watched the video for this action you are requesting. Please see this link.
Yeah. We're actually
Although I
looking
think
at tracking metrics.
So the thing that I get asked quite a lot is which system do I use as a provider? And I've got a pretty stock standard response of there isn't a good one-stop shop suits all. You need to understand your requirements as a business function, and then do your research. And like a kid's high school paper, you'd go, this is the criteria I want, which matches my criteria to the highest standard. You guys have Astalty sort of taken that approach quite literally, and you focus very specifically on a couple of things. What made you sort of stick away from doing some sort of supports versus the supports you guys do?
Yeah, so we originally wanted to do, I guess, rostering. That was the original intent, and we kind of stumbled into support coordination. So when we were building Astalty originally, I had an issue with a staff member, and I wanted them to be able to track their time better. And I came across, I guess, a bit of a dashboard which looks like the task board. And I thought, imagine if this dashboard, you were able to do your case notes, to add your time, to assign participants and everything else. I'm like, how easy would that be for a support coordinator? And then James and I started to talk about that. And then as the idea grew legs, it was like, why don't we go to market with something purely for support coordination? Because there's nothing out there at the moment. We always wanted to build rostering, and we will, but we were like, why don't we go to market with this? There's an opportunity here. Support coordinators are always saying, I need software, what's out there, what options there are, and stuff like that. We saw an opportunity there. We went to market with it. It was kind of at a point where we needed to go to market with something because, the initial money that we'd put towards it was running quite low. And if we weren't going to start generating any revenue, then we would have never have gotten to our goal of building the rostering. So, and now that we built support coordination, we've kind of hung around and built more features and stuff like that. And we're kind of at a point where it's like, all right, we've done everything we wanted to do here. Let's keep going with the rostering.
I really like that I can bill from wherever I am in the system, and I just go at the top, create task, and that is probably the top of my favorite things because I've used so many different systems over the years, and what used to annoy me the most was having to click through 1,000 buttons before I could get to the point where I could write in what I've done for a participant and bill it, and you'd get so annoyed, or you'd be in the middle of one thing and then someone else would call, and being able to just go, oh, okay, I'll just quickly, while I'm I can just from wherever I am in Astalty bill that. It's great.
Absolutely. And I mean, it was kind of like built for that reason because support coordinators are inherently busy. Things are popping up all the time, all day long. You might be doing something on the participant profile and then you get a phone call and like, okay, I need to quickly just jot this down. I'll come back and case note later. Let's just enter it and go back to what I was doing.
Yeah. So I love that. And then something else I have noticed that is kind of cool that you do is you've got a bit about recruiting support coordinators. How did you decide to write or come up with a document about recruiting support coordinators?
So I guess most of that is just based on my own business experience in recruitment and recruiting, I guess, employees at Empowered and how we would So there's things like how we'd write the job ad, what kind of things we'd put in the job ad in regards to like people looking at a job ad and getting a feel for the company and like talking to your vision and your mission and your values and all those sorts of things. Then there's things like, okay, what reference checks, should you be doing? What questions should you be asking at the interview and stuff like that? So it's just a bit of I guess, a helpful resource for support coordinators who are, I guess, looking to make that jump from being a sole trader to hiring people.
But I did want to sort of just bring up some of the other features that you've embedded into it, especially around budget utilization. And you've built budget management in kind of really two separate ways. One being the cost of calculating the service that you're going to be billing, so the business's internal profit, and then the participant budget as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What made you sort of do it in that split? And then what other key areas was your consideration around dealing with the participant budgets?
Yeah, so I think there's two separate things there. One is the services, and that's just everything internal, like you mentioned. So being able to allocate multiple different funding types to a singular person, being able to allocate multiple people. So in the event that you have a PRC and a support coordinator under the one roof, both could be managing that funding or doing that support separately. So giving the organization the ability to add and monitor that and track the expenditure across the span of the plan, and have that in a way that's kind of easy to read. So another thing that when it comes to support coordination or really any service, right, you always want to be tracking the funding and monitoring that throughout the life of the plan. And then we've done it in a way where you can access that information as you're writing your case notes as well. So like if you've got your case notes here and then you've got your utilization there, the utilization will update in real time. So if I bill 15 minutes, it'll go up. And then if I bill another 15, it'll go up again. And it happens in real time. So you know exactly where the funding is at, so long as that initial information is updated and accurate. And going back to, I think one of the things that Hannah said was like not needing to navigate to other parts of the software to find things. It can be, it's right in front of you, adding a case note is right in front of you. The funding is right in front of you. So making that just more accessible for the users as well, because it's so important. And like, if you look around the space at the moment, so many people don't have funding. So many people are exhausting their funding. So it's such an important thing now to keep an eye on. Like you can't just, we know that you can't just exhaust funds and go for plan review and let's not even talk about that email that went out yesterday from the agency.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and so it's become more important than ever to be able to track that stuff.
Yes, especially when we're getting plans through with support coordination of like 12 hours for 12 months. And you sort of look at it and go, what am I even meant to do with just 12 hours? And
Yeah,
but
3-year plan.
yeah. So being able to track it the way that I can in Astalty is really handy dandy. So I really like the software, and for me it's the best that I've ever used. And this is not just because
You don't have to say that, right?
yeah. but
This
like
is not a paid promotion. Well,
yeah, no. But it's the truth. Like I do love Astalty truly. And me and Sam were very clear that we're not going to endorse anything we don't believe in. And we believe in Astalty, and that's why we have you sponsor the podcast. So I personally am quite grateful for everything that it does and the ease of use of it all. So, yeah.
I got to ask Sam, do you use it? Because Hannah said that.
I've looked at Hannah's side of things. Haven't used it specifically myself on a day-to-day, but that's because I generally try and stay out of doing NDIS supports exclusively.
Gotcha.
But it does, from what I've sort of seen with Hannah, and she does rave on it quite a fair bit, even in a non-paid podcast platform.
I just
But
had
she
to
has
ask because Hannah was like, Hannah and I and Ellie use it, but like didn't say your name. So I was like, what does Sam use?
Well, Sam has built his own internal custom stuff because as that sort of preset that I can't necessarily find one software that does what I need it to. And I've got a bit of a developer background, but then I've got my business partner who goes, "You're doing too much
Yeah,
and you still haven't finished that project from 7 weeks ago that I'm still waiting on a specific thing." I'm like, "Yeah, but I've been running a business."
I'm busy. I didn't know you had
So
a developer background. I'll have to get you. You have to touch base with James.
well, not exclusively developer, but I did do a lot of database management, and then kind of expanded when Microsoft brought out a lot more cooler features for sort of code development and easy builds and that sort of stuff. So I jumped into that and did a lot of internal systems processes and developed just to make our lives easier. Also, not to spend extra money on CRMs,
Yeah.
otherwise we'd end up with quite a few running multiple companies, and I just didn't want
Oh,
that data
absolutely.
creep.
Definitely. Yeah. Subscription creep is real.
Yeah. Well, it's more the data management side for me, like looking for that document. I just said at the start of
Mm,
the podcast, trying to track documents and what's current, what's not, where that's sort of live, the approval process from it as well. It just started to get quite a nightmare approach. So I've always kind of preferred that single system point, I guess.
mm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
yeah.
And it's
Makes life
quite,
easier.
when you first purchase or look at purchasing a software, sometimes it can take a long time to look at putting all the participants in and whatever. How have you made that easier?
It can take a long time. I'm not going to lie. One thing that we've tried to do is we've created like an import spreadsheet. So a lot of software providers will allow you to export their data or should allow you to export your data. It's your data and information at the end of the day. And if you can get that information out into a spreadsheet, it makes it so much easier if you can copy that information from your spreadsheet into ours, import it into our system, and then basically have all those profiles created for you rather than like, okay, first name, last name, NDIS number, typing that in for however many participants. I don't want to know how long that would take because it would take forever.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So that's great that you can just sort of do it from a spreadsheet and magic happens in the back end.
Yep, creates everything
With
for you.
Tangent, with that whole upload stuff, if we've got customer records and note records, can we do them all in one, like do the notes to match up with the participant?
So the way that we handle it, we need to have the participant profiles created first.
Hmm.
Then something we've got but we don't have public is a case note import. So we
Hmm.
send you that spreadsheet, and then if you send that back to us, we can then upload it once all the profiles have been created, and then you'll have your
Okay.
case notes stored under the relevant person. We haven't got it in the user guide. It might be like you can find that link there in the system, but we haven't built it so it's self-service just yet. You see people come up with different ways as well. Like people will just do a complete data dump, like export, a CSV for Joe Blogs, and then I'll just upload that CSV onto Joe Blogs profile. So like it's stored on that person's profile, even though they can't access it straight away. And I think it's up to the organization regarding how they want to be able to retrieve that data. Like if it's, who knows, historical stuff from 5 years ago, maybe you're not going to look into it or try and find something from that case note, but you still want it there for record keeping purposes. That might suit you. But like if you want to be able to look at everything you did last week, you probably want the former, which is the case note import.
Yeah, that's a really good feature to know. So we've got with the whole sort of pace change and changes to the new NDIS plans or the new framework plans, as they're calling them, still a bit of a minefield. But you've got a check-in feature or a follow-up, a prompt for support coordinators to sort of plan ahead and be able to see who's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So you asked me before what my favorite feature is, and I think there's an automated email that gets sent out. The subject line is my favorite feature, and it's this feature here. And it was developed from like personal use case where I had seen support coordinators not check in with their participants enough. We would hear complaints and people would leave the service, and then we do deep dives and find out, oh, you haven't touched base with them for 2 or 3 months. Like, what's going on? So I wanted to build a feature which allowed support coordinators to easily access that information, because if you've got a growing caseload, it's hard to keep track of everything, especially when did I last speak to this person? So what it allows you to do is keep yourself accountable and then kind of like set reminders to be like, hey, I need to touch base with this person. We agreed when I started service, every 2 weeks I would touch base with them. So it's just kind of like a nice set and forget that you can do on every single person based on their needs, preferences, whatever they've got going on, to be like, yep, reminder, 7 days, give them a bell.
Yeah, I also noticed you got the days overdue one as well for those people that get lost in their tasks.
Yep. And then if you're a manager, you can filter that and be like, okay, let's search this person's caseload. Do they have anyone overdue? Hey, just a reminder, touch base with these guys. So it's great from a management standpoint. It's great from like an individual. You can keep, yourself accountable. And then for the participant as well, because like you've got things in place to make sure that people are, doing what they said they would.
Have you found that auditors like Astalty as well?
I haven't found that. I don't know if they've actually had any interactions with Astalty. I hope so. We've discussed a lot about like having auditor access. So being able to be, when you go through audit and everyone needs to give consent, only giving them access to the people that have actually given consent. And so they can just jump straight to those profiles. Consent's already been given, and block out the rest.
Ooh, I like that feature.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, the who's in audit and out of audit is an absolute pain to manage, especially with the system access doesn't necessarily allow that, or you to give the auditor a system account. They've got to have either a user account or a viewing account, but it doesn't necessarily change the information that they can get to.
Yeah. So I think when we tackle that problem, I'm sure they'll like it then. But until that point, I'm not sure.
Fair enough.
We'll wait for the follow-up.
Yeah. A quick workaround though, you could set up a tag, this person has given consent, and then filter your caseload by the tag.
I do like the tags. I have to say, we love the tags. So to give some pointers out there to everyone, for example, one of the tags we've got for people who are not funded, who are doing pro bono. So we actually have that in red so that we can very easily see who is who is not funded and who isn't, which is a great reminder for not taking on too many unfunded people for a small business like ours, so that when we go to our dashboard, see all of the participants, we see by colour, because the tags are colourful, which is so cool. And you can see really quickly what your caseload, what the mix of your caseload is. And while I'm on it, being able to track the non-billable hours is great, because then you can say to the NDIS exactly, this is how much I've, gifted this participant essentially, and why you must fund them for support coordination.
Definitely. You still want to capture everything, even if it's unbillable, right? You're still doing the work at the end of the day. And if that's going to build your evidence base, then, it's so easy to capture that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like how you've built or connected in both the participant goals and the tasks to be assigned to that goal. So then when you go through a reporting process and when you're looking at, when support coordinators are looking at building their participant reports for change of circumstances or anything that's going on, they can sort of filter that report and then also see all the different tasks that have been worked towards each goal, the amount of time. Is there anything else that is really useful from a coordinator's point of view with that?
Yeah, I think we haven't touched on it too much, but I really like the new budgeting feature. And have you guys created service agreements or anything like that with that feature just yet?
No, but I was watching a video just earlier about that, and I was saying to Ellie, I might have to look at that more carefully.
It's a great feature, and there's, prior to having it in Astalty, and I'm sure most businesses have gone through this, is like you create the budget on a calculator or wherever it might be, spreadsheet, You then move that budget onto Word, and that captures it in the schedule of supports. And then you, I don't know, save it as a PDF, print it, send it, different software, whatever that looks like. That's all just done in Astalty now. So like you calculate the budget, it pre-populates the schedule of supports. You send it from Astalty to the participant, if that's what you want to do. Alternatively, you can just download it as a PDF and get it signed face to face. If they're okay with getting it e-signed, it goes directly to them. They sign it, comes back to you. It's stored in Astalty. And then you can also track the expiry date in the same workflow. So it's like, it's making it easier for you to be compliant. So it's not like, here's a small part of the process that we've solved. It's like, here's what you should be doing from like a best practice standpoint of getting all your information signed, storing it, tracking it, and everything else. So I think that's just kind of the way that James thinks about problems. And it's I think that's really a reflection of how he solves problems. And he tries to think about, rather than the small individual piece, where does this line up in the business operations of everything? So yeah, so much easier.
He seems like a very logical, it's logical in the way he flows the tasks.
Definitely. Yeah, he's probably the most logical person I've met.
That's so good.
Yeah.
We like
sometimes
logical people.
Yeah, he's super smart guy.
So, in your ideal world, what would the future of the NDIS look like?
In my ideal world, I've always been a strong believer in the NDIS is here for a reason, and that like it's not just about. And I operate in the community access space, right? So a lot of my like strong beliefs and stuff are all centered around the community access scope. And like a lot of people, the misconception is that you just take people to the movies and that you just take people to the beach, and like there's no underlying like reason for doing those things, when there is. You are meant to be building that independence, you are meant to be building that capacity, and everything that you should be doing should be outcome based and outcome focused. And I think like what I would like to see in terms of the space that I operate is people, I guess, being accountable for what they're doing, and people actually having to say, okay, well, I used that $20,000 worth of community access funding, and this is what I did with it. And I think that would be, it would just make sure that providers are a lot more accountable for what they're actually doing. And I think that in turn would improve the service delivery and increase better outcomes as well. And I think that maybe one day, like Astalty will have a hand in that like whatever we build when it comes to the rostering and stuff like that, we'll be able to track goals. We'll be able to track your achievements and the progress that has been made towards whatever it might be over time. So it'll be interesting to see where everything lands in a couple of years, and where we sit in all that.
Yeah, outcomes frameworks, I think, are super important. And we talked to Jade from Wheels Nuts about this. And at Wheels Nuts, they've got it's in Brisbane, but
Great program.
they're expanding. Yeah. And when she was talking about the outcomes framework, it was amazing. And I agree with you that we need more providers to be able to be accountable to that. And, there'd be a reason beyond babysitting, and that, like every now and again, of course, you can just have a break, and the participant might just want to break and go to the beach for the sake of going to the beach like the rest of us.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time you do need to be doing something that is, or when you're taking them to the movies, that you might support them to buy the ticket.
Yeah.
Go up to the counter and say, I want a ticket for this, and learn how to, hand over their money or whatever. So that's awesome.
Intertwine a bit of capacity building in and amongst it all, right?
Exactly.
Even if it's just learning how to schedule or plan out your week. So then you, with your participant, you're going, what do you want to do this week? Oh, I don't know. Well, maybe let's think about what we want to be doing, rather than me coming to your house to take you out on a support shift and spending half an hour trying to work out what we're going to do.
You're throwing shade at me, Sam.
I am not commenting.
Have you guys seen that? I think it was what was it? I don't think it was the review. It was like the pricing review, and they discussed the potential of like outcome-based payments or something like that. And I don't agree with it from a standpoint of you only get paid for outcomes, because it's just not a viable business model. But like look, we live in a capitalist society, and people are motivated by certain things. It would be very interesting to see that. Okay, let's say, imagine you had a base rate for payment, but if you achieved X, you got an additional payment for an amazing outcome. I wonder if that would change how providers operated.
Oh, me. Ask me. So I've got a concern about this idea, because this already is sort of implemented in teaching and with
right.
NAPLAN, right? So what they do is NAPLAN came in, and it's for grade 3, 5, 7, 9. And the idea is that then the school or a teacher might get a bonus if the students go up, and the school will get extra funding and things like this. The problem that has come around from it is that teachers teach children to pass a test, not to have knowledge anymore. And it freaks the kids out every time. Like every time my kids, because I've got 3 kids, have come up to grade 3 or come up to grade 5, they know at the beginning of the year that's the year they'll have to do NAPLAN again. And it freaks them out, right, because they know it's coming. And it is very, very stressful. And it hasn't helped with educational outcomes in Australia, because Australia is still pretty low on educational outcomes in the OECD. So I get nervous when we talk about bonuses for framework outcomes, because then are we just teaching people to pass a test and not actually teaching them a life skill?
Yeah, and that would be the other hard thing about implementing a framework. How do you measure the outcome? There would need to be so many specific measurements around and people haven't always got specific NDIS goals either. So like sometimes you might be supporting someone with mental health, and your goal is based around improving their mental health. So you need specific measures to capture their well-being, and you need to capture it at one point and capture it at another, and then it becomes a whole other thing. So I think it would
when
be
I
very.
heard this, Johnathan, when I heard this like idea sort of state, it really sounded like some bureaucrat going, how do we quantify whether or not a provider should or should not get paid? And then which just unleashes a torrent of questions. Because if we look at DESIs or disability workspaces, even mainstream job search, the payments are all kind of based on doing single-based task or applying for a certain number of jobs or stuff like that. How do you, if we apply that same approach into a DSP's point, it still then raises the question: what if the provider is doing everything they can? And like we've had a participant that we've had on the podcast very recently, and her kind of concern around capacity building is, what if that person is at capacity?
Yeah.
What if they can't? And we know a lot of disabilities are going to be degrading in capacity, ability, cognitive function. It almost the idea kind of creates the you need to select which participants you're going to be servicing almost, and then that starts to exclude people out of it. It just I laughed, absolutely laughed when I saw it, going, how would you even come close to implementing this on an equal playing field? Like, it's in a bureaucratical setting. Yeah, cool. Let's just make sure that people are doing their jobs and growing capacity. That kind of makes a logical function in a finance meeting.
Mm,
We don't deal with finance or logical settings. We get a very dynamic, agile work environment that changes by the day, by the second, by the person.
definitely by the day. There's never
But
ending.
I definitely agree with that from your starting point of what would it look like is more that
Mm,
the capacity building framework and what that outcome framework looks like. How do we, because we're right, we don't want to just be going to the beach for the sake of going to the beach. We want it to be
yeah.
having some sort of impact on the individual to be able to grow a skill. Going to the beach might not be a skill, but starting on the weekend, going, what am I going to do on the week? Actually planning out, okay, Tuesday I'm going to go shopping. Friday I want to go to the beach with my friends. Let's call up some people, see who's available, call my support worker, make sure that's okay. They're all capacity building skills that we learn through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been attempted a few times. Like I've actually got some outcome based framework papers next to me of some people that have attempted it. And
Wish you compare notes. I've got some of those myself.
yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. I think some big providers like Life Without Barriers tried it a few years ago, but yeah, it'd be very interesting to see in practice.
Look, I love that you brought this up because I think that these conversations need to be had because obviously there's lots of different points of view and also there's different points at where there are some people who could be absolutely capacity built to do some things, but also if that person can no longer be capacity built, like Sam pointed out, maybe then the measure of your job is, have you made sure that you are keeping that person comfortable, that you are, see, like the participant we were talking to, and everyone will have heard this before they get to this episode, was talking about, being blind and then support workers doing their dishes and putting things back in a totally different spot, which of course is totally useless to the participant.
Mm,
And so I think, there's another way to sort of say, well, have you done your job, in the sense of, have you actually, put the dishes away where they're supposed to be instead of just willy-nilly all over the kitchen? Have you read the support plan to make sure you know what it is that they need you to do? Have you checked in with the participant?
Mind you, in you saying this, it kind of makes me think that there would be a lot of participants that would be going, yes, if I could measure the support workers doing their damn job in the first place, I'm all for this.
absolutely. And like that's what we wanted to be able to do in Astalty is have things like that easily accessible. Who knows? Personalized checklist. Have you done 1, 2, 3, 4 before you sign off today? Great. You know what I mean? Have you put the dishes back in the right cupboards? Yes. This cupboard here, here's an image of it. But yeah, I was just going to say as well that, there's the difficulty with the outcome based stuff is sometimes the outcomes are not specifically measurable. And it's sometimes the NDIS, it's not always about capacity building as well. Like there's so many other different types of, support and goals people can have outside of that. Like just having someone to talk to sometimes is a huge thing. So, how do you measure the impact of your well-being based on having that person turn up for a couple of hours every day and go for that drive? Especially if you're someone with, a mental health diagnosis, that could mean a lot to you as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have a participant who had never learnt to relax or how to just sort of sit around and not have to be, constantly doing something that was like important. And so I said, no, the support workers can just sit there while you read a book. They could be reading a book and show you that you can just sort of sit and read a book sometimes. And it can be, you might sit back to back so that you still have like the pressure of someone's back on your back, or you might sit next to each other on the couch or something like that, so that you learn that there are times when you can just take a break, and this is what it looks like to be calm and to be present in that moment. How do you measure that?
Great question.
Next
James.
time on the panel.
Yeah.
Relying on you, James, to solve that one.
There you go, James. You've been thrown in the deep end now, mate. Well, thank you so much, Jono, for coming on the podcast. It's been a great little discussion. Great having you here today, and great to learn more about Astalty and yourself.
It's been great having being on here, and thank you guys so much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. All right, bye.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening. Please share with people you know. Until next time, as the Green Brothers say, don't forget to be awesome.